Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look then at what is on the front pages. Coming up, we'll see what's making the headlines with columnist Carole Malone and the editor at the Courier, David Clegg. Welcome to both of you. To the front pages then, let's start with the Metro. Germany demands penalties, they say, leading on the travel list, suggesting Angela Merkel wants quarantine across Europe for British travellers. A call which has found international support, reports The Times. EU threat to thwart holidays, their headline. The Guardian rather, says there is a cabinet rift over plans to grant more travel freedoms to those who have received both doses of a coronavirus vaccine. Foreign holidays confusion deepens. The Telegraph reports that ministers are accused of making summer travel more complex. But the Daily Mail is upbeat, declaring that summer getaways have been saved. Football supporters returning from London after Scotland's Euro clash with England are being blamed for a spike in coronavirus cases. That's according to David's paper, The Courier. Financial Times leading on the Bank of England, attempting to calm fears over inflation, saying they are holding interest rates. And The Star reports on the diplomatic standoff involving the Royal Navy and Russia near Crimea yesterday in a way that only The Star can. So, Carole Malone and David Clegg are here. Welcome to both of you. The big announcement about travel, obviously, we await more news next month. David, let's kick off with you then, because the Daily Mail is very positive about it. Holiday islands, here we come, they say.
Yes, that's one of the interesting things of how the papers are covering it. It's fair to say quite a number of the papers have been putting as much pressure as possible on the government to open up the travel industry, to get flights going back into Europe, to get the industry moving again. And the Mail in particular in tomorrow's edition is taking a very positive view of this announcement today. They're saying we're on our way to a summer sunshine holiday. My personal view on this really is I don't really understand why there has been so much pressure for this. I understand if you're an airline executive, if you rely on the tourism industry, that you're going to be very, very keen to get this up and running. But given we've still seen this kind of certainly a large spike in cases in Scotland, still concern about exactly where we're going, this slight more hesitancy about opening up in other ways, I personally don't think that a holiday abroad is a priority for this summer, and maybe the staycation solution is the way forward. The Daily Mail takes a different view. It has been pushing hard for the foreign holidays to resume, and they seem to be saying that they're getting their way.
That was red-ragged Carole. Carole?
This isn't just about holidays abroad, is it? This is about opening up an entire industry again. This is about
line, is it?
The hospitality industry. Oh, sorry?
We haven't got a great line to you. Go on, persist. We'll try, and otherwise we'll...
I'm not to blame, Carole.
So, you sabotaged it.
Go on, Carole, have another go.
Are we here or not? Okay, so I'm saying it's not just about having a holiday. It's about reopening the travel industry. It's about reopening the hospitality industry. Generally, it's not just about having 2 weeks in Spain or 2 weeks in Mallorca. It's not about that. It's about we need it to see this country again, and this shows that he absolutely is. And David talks about increased infections. Yes, we have. Like there was 16,000 new infections. But hospital deaths are and hospitalizations are actually good. So
OK. Carole, do you know what? We're going to redial you, or whatever it is in modern technology terms. We'll get you back in a moment. But the point Carole was trying to make there, obviously, David, is that if you have high cases, but you don't have the hospitalisations putting pressure on the NHS, and you don't have that awful number of deaths that we saw in lockdown 1 and lockdown 2, then why don't you just crack on? I mean, that's part of the issue here, isn't it? So what do you reckon to that argument?
So I think if the government thought it was entirely safe, they wouldn't be doing this caveated second green list, which is a watch list now as well. I think what people, including, in fact, the industry that Carole's talking about, what they need more than anything is certainty and security about what is going on. So if we think it's safe and we don't think it's going to have a negative impact on people's health or God forbid, increase the fatality rate from COVID, then we should go ahead, and there's no doubt about that. If, however, we think that there is a risk here, if we do think that it's dangerous, if we do think we have to be careful about it, what I think the industry need is support and clarity about what exactly is going to be possible and what exactly it is going to be. So the government have announced today this idea of a green watch list, which is an attempt to not see a repeat of the chaos that we saw with the Portugal situation, where people were given very little notice that this was changing. There's 13 of the 14 countries that have been put on the green list that are on a green watch list, which is a warning that they could be changed at very, very short notice. So what that says to me is that this idea that this is all safe and they don't think it's going to be a problem isn't quite correct, because if it was correct, what would be the need for that? What we find is that it's certainly true that thanks to the brilliant rollout of the UK's vaccination programme, that link between getting COVID and ending up in hospital has been broken, especially if you're double jabbed. But we're not there yet, and I do think that rather than rush into this, there should be a patient approach taken, and if that means having to delay the summer holidays, having to not get this industry reopened as quickly as we might have want, let's just support that industry in other ways and make sure that they get certainty and clarity about what's going to happen in the weeks and months ahead.
Yes, 13 out of 14 of the newly named green countries, as you said, going on a green watch list. Malta was the nation that did not. Israel also added to green watch, which has really irritated the Daily Telegraph, suggesting that holiday confusion has deepened. Holidaymakers have been told their plans could be upset at the last minute. The other thing that could upset plans is the lead for the metro, which is, first of all, Germany's Merkel and now France's Macron, suggesting that there should be an EU-wide approach to British holidaymakers who both have to quarantine in those nations, along with Belgium as well, and Italy, I think, too. So, you know, we may well be rejected because of the Delta variant by the European countries we want to go to.
Yeah, so I think there's two interesting things there. The Telegraph, which has also been pushing for the industry to be opened up, for the flights to get running, for the holidays to get up and going, they are much more sniffy about the government's announcement today. They're much more saying that this is going to cause more confusion. They don't think it's far enough. They're quoting industry voices complaining about the way this has been executed. So the Daily Mail's optimism about it is not shared by everyone there. Then the Metro, I think, makes what could ultimately be the most important point here, because Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, she's been raising concerns about the UK. She's asking for her partners in the EU to band together and have a wider approach across the EU about this 14-day period that you have to self-isolate, quarantine if you arrive in Germany from the UK. So we could actually see that the UK government saying, let's get the industry up and running, let's go, but actually the country saying, well, no, that's not going to work quite so well. So I think this is obviously a very complicated situation, as with all these decisions about the reopening of coronavirus. They're very, very complicated. They're finely tuned, balanced decisions, but also we also have the situation here where it's more than just one government. In any kind of tourist transaction, it's going to involve both countries agreeing about how this operates. So I do think there's difficulty ahead here.
Yes, and the other bit that people were waiting for, Carole, is can the double jabbed go to amber-list countries and come back and not quarantine? A very long statement from the Department for Transport this evening. Our intention is that later in the summer, arrivals who are fully vaccinated will not have to quarantine when travelling from amber-list countries. We expect this to occur in phases, starting with UK residents. They will still be required to take a pre-departure test and a test on day 2, and any positive results will then be sequenced. At the same time, we do intend to remove the guidance that people should not travel to amber-list countries. So that will be interesting, all waiting to find out what you do with the under-18s and the non-vaccinated. So that's a decision still to come, parked until next month. What's your feeling about the double-jabbed having some liberty?
Well, yes, but it depends when that liberty is going to come. It could come too late for the travel industry. The travel industry can't afford to lose another summer in this country. And, you know, I know Mrs. Merkel is actually saying that there should be a 14-day quarantine, and Macron has joined in, and that she's trying to persuade the other EU countries. I don't think she's going to be able to do that, actually, because the British pound it's very important to those countries, you know, places like Spain and Portugal. I mean, Italy now has a 5-day quarantine, but we're still very important to them. And I'm not entirely sure these countries will listen to Mrs. Merkel and Macron, who I'm sure are. I'm sure there's more involved in this than just the safety of the people of their country. But I don't think they're going to be able to hold the Brits from going to Europe this summer. So yes, it would be fantastic if those of us who are double jabbed are going to be able to get away. But it's not going to be any good if they're going to wait until September to do it.
OK, Carole, I just want to bring in your paper, The Courier. We saw all those thousands of Scottish fans come down with no home to go to apart from perhaps Leicester Square and a bar. What's happened as they return? Because we've had some high figures across the UK, which is partly surge testing in Scotland, isn't it?
Yeah, the last 2 days in Scotland have been the two highest days on record. So it was 3,000 or just under 3,000 new cases today. And where I am in Dundee, there was a health board meeting today where one of the board members put this down explicitly to football fans returning from London. There was one coach going back to Perthshire where there was a COVID outbreak, another one in Angus here. And, you know, It isn't funny, but it does seem that all the Scotland fans maybe got from that game was an outbreak of COVID in some cases.
Yeah, but it may not have come from England. But David, it may not have come from England. It might have just come from them mingling.
Yeah, no, I think there's certainly not a suggestion that it's just came from England. I think it is very much the social interaction, the lack of social distancing that was going on here, and I think the proof really is that for the first time ever, really, the new cases are overwhelmingly male. There's not really been much disparity between men and women up to now, but the new cases that we've been seeing in the last few days, there's been a preponderance of them have been men.
Fascinating. That's very interesting, isn't it? Certainly keeping an eye on that in Scotland. Plenty more still to come, though, in the next part of our programme. This on the front page of the Financial Times. George Osborne has been appointed to lead the British Museum. What do you make of that? Back in a moment.
It's my own anecdotes, stories that didn't make it into my other books, but also the stories of other explorers, leaders in different fields, in business, in sports, in industry, everyone from astronauts to the Dalai Lama. So it's kind of all the wisdom that I've picked up along the way from some of the most remote and fascinating communities in the world. I met the Dalai Lama in India on my Walking the Himalayas expedition, and so he imparted some of his sort of guidance. But for me, it was actually just the normal people that I met along the way, from shepherds to pirates to cannibal monks. I mean, I've met the lot, really, and so it's people like that who've told me different ways of life, different ways of living. And what I've tried to do is compile all of that into the themes and lessons that hopefully people can take away and use in daily life. So it's not just for people who perhaps want to be a professional explorer. This book really is for anyone from career changers to people that just want to take a different perspective on life. There's a lot of stories in there from my time in the army, all the way through to from my sort of when I started my own basic training to the lessons in leadership and teamwork that I learned on the ground in places like Afghanistan. So really, I focus on, how to build a team. How do you get the best out of people? How do you motivate people? Leading by example, that's a really key facet to any leader. You've got to lead from the front. You've got to show people that you're willing to do the most difficult, dangerous jobs yourself in order to inspire and motivate your team. So it's all those sorts of lessons. And I think what the readers will get out of it, hopefully, is that sense of both practical applicability and just hopefully motivating people. We've all been stuck inside for a very long time now. I think we're all ready to get out and travel and explore the world again. So it's about adopting the explorer's mindset. And humans have, I've got this innate curiosity. It's been with us since we've evolved. And sadly, we've kind of been stuck inside. We've not been able to release that. So I'm hopefully encouraging everybody to tap back into their inner explorer.
Dan usaha saya menggaraplah hutan.
Hello, or like we say in my language, Zole. I am Tonti, the founder and the CEO of Renewables in Africa. This picture changed my whole career and my whole life. Our mission is simple, it's to bring back power to Africa. And our vision is to turn the dark continent that I saw in 2008 into a brighter and prosperous one by 2040.
Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me are columnist Carole Malone and editor of the Courier in Dundee, David Clegg. Welcome back to both of you. We saw that Boris Johnson promised to do something about obesity after his brush with COVID last year. And junk food TV ads is one element of doing this, Carole.
You know, this is just a load of nonsense. The government keep on coming up with these initiatives, none of which have the vaguest effect on obesity stats. You know, there was the sugar tax. It hasn't changed obesity at all. In fact, since the sugar tax, obesity has got higher. In other countries where they've tried the sugar tax, places like Mexico, it hasn't worked either. And they find that, you know, by putting this tax on, it reduces kids' calories by something like 1 or 2 calories a day. It's nonsense. This isn't going to make any difference. You know, the government keeps on thinking if it bans things, it's going to actually tackle obesity. It isn't. The only way to tackle obesity in this country is to you've got to have a change in culture. It's got to be a cultural change. In the same way that smoking became naff, we have to make being obese naff. You know, people saw those photographs on the side of fact packets. The way we talked about smoking, the way we acted about it, it became a terrible thing to do. But
wasn't the advertising ban part of the reason that attitudes to smoking changed, though, Carole?
No, I don't think it was. I think it was the amount of illness it changed. You know, we keep on saying to people, you know, we live in a country where you cannot tell someone they're overweight in case it upsets them. GPs are not allowed to say to children or adults, you are overweight and you must do something about it, which is a crazy situation to be in. We call it fat shaming. It's wrong. You have to tell people what they're doing is they're killing themselves. You know, we have a situation now where kids are going to be dying before their parents because they're obese.
David, do you want to crack on with that, or do you want to go to the next one?
I can crack on. I mean, I think we've seen some of these advertising bans actually working and changing attitudes. Part of the way that you change attitudes is to the public perception of it is shaped by how society feels about it, and just even the message of saying this is not something that we should be advertising to children because it's bad for them, I think actually has a positive message there. That's slightly different to banning the product in itself, which we've also seen in other instances as well. So I think actually that we might find, because some of these proposals have been watered down, that some in the health industry will have wanted the government to go further. So I certainly think this seems like a pretty modest proposal, which is a good idea because of the cost, both in health and to the public purse, of treating obesity is worthwhile.
We're going to have to end it there.